Come. Have a phone charger? Yes, hold it just for a minute.
We are live.
We are live.
We are live.
Hotep brothers and sisters, we're so happy to meet you from wherever you are, all the way across the globe. Our audience is growing day by day, and we have people in almost every continent. So we're really delighted. We are in our 12th year here, the MKA Institute, and we're very, very fortunate to be able to welcome people physically here, but also we are very happy to be able to have a large and growing YouTube live stream audience, thanks to the great Brother Kareem Board and Carlton Sudan. They are these guys are experts, and we're really delighted and very, very proud of them, and very, very happy for what they do for us. We live in times of great stress, and of course, we as African people have been there. We've seen everything. There's nothing that is being seen in the world today that Africans have not seen. And we have experienced everything. And one of the things that I just wanted to say is that we know always that historically, if there is oppression, there will be resistance. And we know that sometimes violence, when it comes, we try to figure out where it comes from. But if you oppress people, as we saw in South Africa, as we saw in the United States of America, and as we are seeing in Mauritania and Sudan, we also recognize that the situation in Southwest Asia is a situation that is caused by people suffering. So we recognize that, and we have to understand that if you are caged, you seek to be free. And if you are stepped on, you seek to stand up. So this situation should not go on forever. And I'm one of the people who say that I believe that the Israeli people deserve to live in peace, but I also believe that the Palestinian people deserve to live in peace. So we just have to know that as a historical reality as African people. It is absolutely our job always to speak up and to talk about what brings about ma'at. Ma'at is harmony and balance and order. That's what we want. We don't want violence. We've never been a people for violence. In fact, the overwhelming characteristic of the African people has been a sort of xenophilia. That is, we welcome strangers. We open our arms to strangers. This is one of the characteristics that you find most when you travel on the continent of Africa. When you see African people in the United States, wherever, there's a receptivity that we have to people because we recognize them as other humans. We are all human beings. There are no human beings better than other human beings, and there are no human beings that are greater than any other human beings. We all are human. We all Homo sapiens, only one race, the human race, that started in Africa. Fundamentally, all of us are the descendants of the DNA from one African woman who lived about 300,000 years ago in Africa. So it's a community, and it's a world community, and we have to recognize that and appreciate that world community. And so we welcome you to the MKA Institute lectures here at our building. We are absolutely honored today. We are, very, very happy to have a brother that I have watched so many years, and I've learned from him, and I've seen his development and his incredible commitment to our people and to our community. Most people don't realize that Hugh Clark is a special human being, and he's special because Lotus Academy that he and Anna Walker and others started years ago is one of the oldest continuous independent black institutions. Y'all don't understand that. Y'all don't understand that. I try to run an institution. It's hard. It's difficult. Lotus, he will tell us more about it. Lotus Academy, its beginning, its origin, and the challenges that have to be confronted not just annually, but every day you have to confront challenges, you see. And we are a population of over 40 million now in the United States of America. And one of the things that we have not done adequately in this country, and I hope that the brothers and sisters in Brazil who are attuned to this will get this message, because you are 100 million black people in Brazil. And in Brazil, you have the chance, as people are waking up. I'm just so proud of the Brazilians waking up in every capacity. Rebecca Andrade is an incredible gymnast. She's right next to Simone Biles. I'm saying, wow, this is amazing that Brazil has now produced this incredible gymnast, you see. But the African people are waking up in Brazil in every capacity: education, working, civic responsibilities, independent schools, independent organizations. And we in the United States of America have to be very proud of an organization like Lotus Academy. But we got this population. But one of the things that we have to learn more, I believe, we're getting there. We're getting there slowly, but you have to remember, we have a whole history of coming out of the enslavement, coming out of segregation and discrimination, but we have to be more philanthropic in our relationship to the things that support us. And so I'm very, very happy and very pleased to have here in this audience tonight a brother who has, look at this, he went to Harvard University, came out, went to University of Pennsylvania, got his law degree from University of Pennsylvania, and then in between trying to work and make a living, he also helped to build an independent private institution. Brother, we respect you. You have you earned my respect just going into Lotus and saying we need to educate these babies, these children that we are raising in this society, so that they won't become casualties in this society. So many of our children have become casualties in this society because they have not had that loving hand. We're pleased, and we're gonna, at this time, this outstanding brother Hugh Clark, we're gonna ask you to come and talk to us. If they're, and let us ask questions about independent school, or whatever challenges you face, and then tell us how we can help you. All right? Thank you. Brother Hugh Clark. Thank you.
Okay, Hotep. First, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr. Asante and Anna for giving me the opportunity to address you at this institute. This institute is so important. There are so few places, there are so few venues where we can talk about who we are, what we need to do, where we are going, where we came from, and what we must do to get to where we need to be. And so I'm very appreciative and would like to extend my most sincere thanks for this opportunity. Let me start by saying that this was supposed to be an address by myself and Dr. Ina Walker, who a lot of you know. She is unable to be here. She had a little bit of a hiking accident, so to speak. But she said that she'll be tuning in and may even have some questions in case I missed something or whatever. I'm very pleased that we also asked Brandy Anderson, who's sitting here in front of me. Brandy is a lawyer, an educator, a racial equity strategist, and founder of the Anti-Racism Academy, a company that she started and runs. But most important for me is that she's a parent at Lotus Academy. And she sort of reminds me of the old commercial they had for Temple University that Bill Cosby used to do before he was not really, before he was persona non grata. And the commercial ran, "I'm Bill Cosby. I could send my kids anywhere, but I'm sending them to Temple University." And we're always very, very pleased and honored when we get parents who know enough about what we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it, that they would pick Lotus Academy over any of the countless institutions that they could choose, because they can really choose whatever they want to choose. So we will hear from Brandy, Mathora Brandy, as we say at Lotus Academy. We will hear from her after I finish with my remarks. And she's a lawyer, and she knows that we have a real tendency to be long-winded. So I'm going to do what I can to make sure that I don't take up all the time, because I would really like to hear what she has to say, both in her work, and she was a former educator. As she'll tell you, she taught at one of the African-themed charter schools in the city. And she's done a lot of work around those issues that are so important to us as African people. So we will definitely hear from her. Let me start by dealing with some definitions. I learned from Dr. Asante, as well as a number of other scholars, Dr. Dove and whatever, that whenever you're going to talk about something, it's really important that everybody is clear on the meaning of the words that you're using. Because a lot of times we assume that when we say a word that everybody is thinking the same thought is on the same plane as you, but very often that is not the case. So Dr. Asante called me up and said, "Listen, you're going to be doing a lecture." He didn't ask, by the way, but he doesn't have to ask. You know, when he calls, I'm ready. He says, "You're going to be doing a lecture on the challenges to independent Black institutions." And I said, okay, well, first and foremost, as I prepare myself mentally for this, I want to make sure that we're all clear on what we mean by independent Black institutions, because there's a lot of leeway in there for those words, especially when you start talking about Black and this and that and whatever. So let's start off with the first one, independent. When we talk about independent Black institutions, what we're talking about are institutions that can practice that word that is part of Dr. Asante's lexicon, and that's agency. That's right. That's when you, and I'm going to take right out of his book, agency, a person or thing through which power is exerted or an end is achieved. So if you want to have an independent anything, you have to be the person who is possessing and utilizing that agency. Meaning you can do what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and with whom it needs to be done. You make those decisions. You might not always make the right decision, but if you collaborate with people who know better than you, if you take advantage of your history, if you look inside of yourself, you will figure out the best way to do it, and you really don't need or want anybody else outside of your sphere to be telling you what to do. So when we talk about independent, that's what we're talking about. the opportunity to exert our agency, just like Dr. Asante is doing here. Now, the next one gets us in all kind of trouble, because as soon as you say black, I mean, it means a million things to a million people, okay? So we make it real simple at Lotus Academy when we're talking to parents, when we're talking to staff, when we're talking to students, when we're talking to ourselves. When we say black, that's just a catch-all phrase for Dr. Asante's word, Afrocentricity. That's what we're talking about. And again, just to save some time, I'm just going to quote from him. Afrocentricity, a process of analysis and synthesis that recognizes African people as subjects in history rather than as victims who operate on the fringes of society. That's Asante, 1980. It posits that people of African ancestry have the right and responsibility to center themselves in their own subjective possibilities and potential, and through that recentering process, to reproduce and refine the best of themselves, not the worst, the best. And I'll finish it up by saying the primary objective of an effective education, IBI, is to create an educational environment that elevates and enriches the mind by providing it with a learning experience that is derived from reference points that validate the African individual. And that's what we are about when we say that we're a black institution. And by the way, some of these quotes are really coming. Dr. Walker Mathura is not here, but she sort of is here because in 2001, she wrote a dissertation to get her PhD from the, I guess then called the African American Studies Institute department. And she submitted that dissertation. Of course, it went through and everything, and that's when she got her PhD. So a lot of the quotes that I'm attributing to you and whatever I really got from her dissertation. So I'm sure she will recognize many of them. Yeah. Finally, let's talk about what we mean by an institution. An institution is not the same as an organization, okay? An institution is a body that is governed by values and not personalities. And this is the reason why in our history we've had so much trouble. We've had some great movements and whatever. We had the more science movement with Noble Drew Ali. But the problem was once Noble Drew Ali was gone, the more science movement was gone. We had the great Garvey movement. And Marcus Garvey, as we all know, was a tremendously effective and charismatic individual. But when they ganged up on him and sent him to Atlanta Federal Prison in 1925, that was it for the Garvey movement. Now, of course, we all know it stuck around and whatever, but without Marcus Garvey, there was just no chance that it would go on. Even the Nation of Islam, who I used to be so involved with, it was really a shame to watch what happened to the Nation of Islam after the Honorable Elijah Muhammad died. And you had all the infighting in terms of where things were going to go and whether Wallace was going to be in charge or Minister Louis Farrakhan was going to be in charge. The problem that the organization had, as great as it was that it was really not an institution, because institutions have processes in place for succession, because none of us are going to live forever. And we have to be able to govern our institutions by values. Anyone who can step in and continue with those values, they are a worthy successor. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about independent black institutions. Institutions that are governed by values. Institutions that have agency within their possession, and institutions that understands what it means to be an African person, the best of what it means to be an African person. So this is where we are. Now, one of the things that's really interesting, and I didn't say this to Dr. Asante because the whole concept of talking about independent black institutions, we probably need to be here a week, but I can definitely talk about independent black institutions in the education realm. That I can talk about. And you need to understand that in the education realm, it's a little different than it is in other realms. And what makes it different, and I won't drill down too much with this because I don't want to take up too much time, but it's important for you to understand that this thing that our European rulers call the Constitution, of course, is pretty sorry, but they do have some things in there that are important, okay? They didn't follow any of the things they said, but that's a whole nother conversation. The First Amendment to the Constitution says there has to be separation of church and state. That's right. Now, why is that important to education? It's important because early on, it became clear that if you were a Catholic, for example, that you did not have to send your children to public schools. You could have your own school system. And that's what they did. And of course, we all know at one time they had a tremendous public Catholic school system and Catholic colleges too. Now, what's important about that is that finally, sometime after Reconstruction, because actually the public school system was really catapulted into existence because of Reconstruction. Europeans still had a lot of guilt back then, so they said, okay, we have to educate these people. We used to kill them when they tried to learn how to read. So now we have an obligation to sort of help them out. So that's when the public schools started. And then eventually they had something called compulsory education laws. Compulsory education laws meant, well, in Pennsylvania, I can tell you exactly what it means. It means that every child must go to school between the ages of 6 and 16. Pennsylvania is one of the few states, by the way, left in the country where you don't have to go to kindergarten. You don't have to start school until you're 6, and you can leave after 16 whenever you feel like it, if you feel like it. So you have this kind of a collision situation where you can start your own independent schools, and that's what the Catholic schools were, independent schools. But there's this compulsory education, so what that means is that for the Catholic schools, for Lotus Academy, for any of the private independent schools, the state, the government, can only regulate you in 2 respects. Number 1, you have to keep attendance, because if someone is going to your school, it's important that the state knows that they're attending school. That's number 1. Number 2, you have to have the school in a building that has been certified as safe. So L&I comes around and makes sure that the building is safe, and if you have food on the premises, the health department, that's it. So what we're saying is that in Pennsylvania, like most other states, they can't tell you about curriculum. They can't tell you about teacher certification. They can't tell you about graduation requirements. You can do it how you want to do it, and they can't say a thing about it. Now, of course, you still want to have a quality program. I mean, the Catholics, if they wanted to, they could have catechism from 9 to 2 and then have academic subjects from 2 to 3 every day. Well, of course, they wouldn't want to do that because, of course, they want to educate the children. My point is that from Lotus Academy's inception, they had the capacity to build the program the way they wanted it to be built, and to have the teachers who didn't necessarily need to have the formal training, though most of them did, but who had the perspective and the mind and the knowledge of self that would allow them to propel these children into being the future leaders of tomorrow, as we like to call them. So that's one of the unique things about independent black institutions in the education realm. It's already set up so you can truly, truly, truly be independent. So here we are, and I guess the best way for me to start off is I'm going to read a quote from Mathura Aina, Dr. Walker's dissertation, and it's really something that shows that she was kind of prescient in the sense that she sort of saw where things were going in 2001. In 1986, Kofi Lamoti of the Council of Independent Black Institutions, the acronym was CB, and I see Ron and a few other people here that know all about this stuff, reported that there were 60 full-time member schools of the organization in 1986. There were 60 independent black institutions in the educational realm, and there were some really good ones. Hakeem Booty had his in Chicago. The Roots people had theirs, and I mean, they had exactly. Nation House down in Washington, D.C., they had some killers. We used to go down there to visit, to try to get tips, talk to the people, consult with each other. These were some quality schools. She goes on to say, in 1992, this number had declined to 38 independent black institutions that were institutional members of CB. In 1998, the membership was comprised of 20 schools. And by the year 2000, the membership of CB reflected just 7 institutions. 7, and this is in 2000, 23 years ago. And Dr. Walker Mathurinus says, though it is certainly possible that there are schools that fit the criteria that simply dropped off the CB membership rolls, and here's where her forward thinking, the dwindling numbers clearly suggest an unmistakable trend. So right now, you might get different answers and whatever, but right now I would think that most people would agree that the number of schools left in CB is 1, 2, or 3. Because CB, for all practical purposes, is not a functioning organization because there's just not enough membership, not enough people. There's still plenty of people out there who believe in CB, but as far as an organization, as an institution, it pretty much is gone. So I start off that way because I think it's important for us to understand that we're proud to be one of the last ones, but it's also extremely discouraging. It's extremely discouraging because these independent schools are very, very, very important. So let me kind of give you a little case history or a story about Lotus Academy, and you might understand what some of the problems are. Lotus Academy started from a group of us back in the, and I see a lot of my old timers here, so you can appreciate this, back during the so-called black movement. Yes. Some people would say black power movement, but whatever you want to say, you know what I'm talking about. Back then, everybody wanted to be black. I mean, we had all kinds of competitions and contests. I remember one of the ones that I remember when I came to Philly from Boston was the Afro competition. You could almost tell how black somebody was by how giant their Afro was, you know. But, you know, we all knew that was superficial, but it was kind of fun and whatever. But what we really were interested in were finding people who were trying to find out who they really were and where they came from and where they needed to go. And so we had a group that I was a part of called the Sankore Society. And of course, all those that know anything about African history know about Sankore and Timbuktu and all of that. The Sankore Society was a group of like-minded individuals who thought that it was important for us to find out who we were, what we had lost, how to regain it, and then pass it on to our children generation by generation. So we had all kind of study groups. We studied 3-4 times a week together. We lived together. We ate together. And we knew we didn't know a lot that we needed to know, but we knew if we put the work in, that we would find out. And that's what we did. And we had a lot of slogans, nuggets of wisdom and whatever. One of the things that we were interested in was not just gaining this historical precision about who we were and where we came from, but also recognizing that we as African people are spiritual people. And there's certain spiritual precepts that transcend organized religion, and we really wanted to get into that. And we did get into that. We also understood that being spiritual people, we had temples. These temples were our bodies. And therefore, we developed lifestyles that respected the body. And these were things that we also wanted to pass on. So the group started back in, I guess, 69 or 70, and we continued to grow in numbers and hopefully in wisdom and whatever. And then at one of our study groups that we had, somebody said, this is all great. We're learning who we are, and we're learning all the things that the European has done to make us, as Dr. Asante said, essentially insane. Mm-hmm. But, we were still young then, and, we had children and whatever. He said, well, what are we going to do with the children? We're going to send them to public school? I mean, how in the world does that work? You learn all these things, and you know what the school system is about. Certainly back in the 70s, you knew what it was about. I'm not going to say whether it's any better now, it probably is. So we said, that's not going to work. So if we really believe all these things that we've learned, that we've discussed, that we've agonized over, blood, sweat, and tears, we have to have our own schools. It's not a question of should we have to. So we started a school in 1974. By the way, we're celebrating our 50th year this year. And the school originally was not called Lotus Academy. It was called Kumba Basara. And I won't get into where all that's coming from, but it was called Kumba Basara, and given black folks penchant for nicknaming things, everyone called it Kabu, because that Kumba Basara was just a little too much. So we started off, and it was an offshoot of one of our primary principles. We used to always say, do for self, support your kind, and educate your own. That's what we believed. So we started the school. And we were very fortunate. We had a lot of very, very, very educated, intelligent people. We only had a few that were actual teachers or had trained as teachers. But people stepped in, and we created a school that was just unbelievable. It really was. And like I said, we didn't have a lot of teachers. We had one woman who was very instrumental in getting us off the ground and whatever. And she'd actually graduated from Westchester University, magna cum laude, great teacher and whatever. Her parents were all teachers and whatever. But she decided she wanted to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. So I met her at University of Pennsylvania Law School. I started talking to her about the Sankore Society and all that. Next thing I know, she quit law school and was teaching at our school. She finally did go back to school. In fact, now she's a federal judge, but that's a whole nother story. So we started this school in 1974, and we were rolling along. Every person who taught at the school was a member of our group. Mm-hmm. Every child that was a student at the school was the child of a member of our group. Okay. So we didn't really have any discipline problems. We didn't have any ideological problems. We really didn't have any problems at all. And because of our sense of responsibility, the teachers didn't get paid because these were our children. So everybody that worked there, we had PhDs working there. My roommate from Harvard was a PhD in psychology. He was teaching math in there. Didn't get a dime. But this is what we felt we had to do. This was our responsibility. You don't think about the European as this force against nature and then send your children out there for him to educate them. That just doesn't make any real sense. So we went along, and we did very, very, very well. And then we made a momentous decision, which had its pluses and minuses, but it was a very momentous decision. We went public in 1983. When I say public, I don't mean that, we got an IPO and we went to Wall Street and raised a bunch of money. I mean that we actually started recruiting teachers who were not members of our group. We had students that were not members of our group. And we had parents who obviously were not members of our group. But it really wasn't a problem because back then there were so many people, and people like Brother Ron can tell you, there were so many people who were really trying to find themselves and who were doing great work and whatever. And these were the people that we attracted. Mm-hmm. So it went very, very, very well from 1983. And then some things started to happen. Two things happened that'll get me to the conclusion of this. Number one, the so-called Black Power movement fell apart. Fell apart. Because like I said, when we first started, everybody wanted to be the blackest possible. know as much about their history and their heritage and their culture as possible. That died out. That died out. And so now, even though we were public, the number of people who were really interested in sending their children to a legitimate, independent black institution, it dwindled also. It dwindled also. And then, if that wasn't enough, then came along the African-centered charter schools. Now, I had a very, very, very good conversation with Brandy yesterday, and so many good points came out. And one of the things that I was trying to get across to her, because for those who were involved in CB back then, you know, there was a real debate about whether charter schools could join CB, because it was a council of independent black institutions. And there were some who said, well, they're really not independent. They are public schools. And what I was trying to convey to Brandy was that it wasn't like we were in competition with them. There was no conflict. It was just a matter of trying to figure out that they really fit under the definition. We still worked with them. We still supported them. We still shared information and whatever. But the CB was a bit of a problem. So when the charter schools came in, there were many African-themed ones back in the day. Dr. Sante, all you people are familiar with that. And we found out something very, 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 very basic, very important. We couldn't compete with the charter schools because they were free. So a lot of people who were looking, understandably, who were looking to have their children in an African-centered school, they started going to Kepra. They started going to Imani. I don't think Sankofa was around then, but Walt Palmer had some schools and whatever. Yes. So things started really going down. I have 8 children that went to Lotus Academy and graduated. They all did well. I'm not bragging on me, I'm bragging on Lotus. 3 went to Central, 4 went to Central, 3 went to engineering and science, and my daughter got a full scholarship to Germantown Friends right down the street. When my youngest son graduated from Lotus in 2004, we had 200 students. 200 students. And we had a separate building with about 40 or 50 students in our pre-K and K program. Last year, we had 52 students because it is very, very difficult to find people who are willing to pay for an independent black institution. And we understand times are hard out here. They're really hard. So it's not like, you know, people are spending the money on crazy stuff. It's just trying to survive. So where we are now is we're not going to do as much celebrating for our 50th anniversary as we are going to try to prepare ourselves to be around another 50 years. I don't think I'll be around, but I'd like to believe that Lotus will be around for another 50 years. And so I can get to the point, Dr. Asante, and answer the question that your title was really screaming out for to be answered. What are the challenges? Well, the first one I've already alluded to, the market. Where are the people who really put a value on African-centered education? Where are they? It's very hard to find them. I would imagine this would be a great place to find some of them, you know. So that is our biggest challenge. And I'm sure for any independent black institution, as yours is, where are these people? I mean, this should be standing room only every week, pandemic or no pandemic. But it's really hard to locate the people who are passionate about what you're passionate about. So that's the first challenge, is how do we find the people, or even better, how do we cultivate the people who understand the value of independent black education? And of course, that leads to the real serious problem of money. Because it's no secret that all of these independent black institution schools that have closed down, they've closed down because of money. It wasn't because people lost interest in them. It's all about money. So we are in the process, and I'm not going to do this now. I'm not going to turn this into a telethon, I promise. We're in the process now in this 50th year of reaching out to our friends, our comrades, our colleagues, our parents, our supporters, and people from the past, and see if we can raise enough money that we're not looking at our 51st year wondering if we can even open the doors again. And that's one of the things that we're doing, and there'll certainly be many opportunities to talk about that. The other thing that I want to conclude with the challenges is something that you and I talked about a few weeks ago. If you ask me, other than the money, which is obvious that, unfortunately we live in a society where, you do have to pay the electric bill and the water bill and a gas bill. I don't care how Afrocentric you are. There's no discount for Afrocentricity that I've seen anyway. So one of the real challenges that Dr. Asante addressed, and the one thing about Dr. Asante, whenever he addresses a challenge, he's always going to follow that up by talking about a solution. And one of the things that really intrigued me when we met back in September before the school year started, you were talking about a teacher training institute. Because one of the challenges that we had, even when we had money, was finding teachers that really should be teaching at an Afrocentric institution. Because just because you have a degree from Westchester or Temple or whatever to teach, that does not mean that you should be teaching our people, because so many of those people, and again, it's not their fault, that's right, but their values, their sense of history, their sense of self has nothing to do with what we're doing. I remember we had a teacher a while back. She was a very, very good teacher. And she eventually quit. And I was talking to her. She was actually from Puerto Rico. She's a Puerto Rican. And she said, look, I love this school. I love everything you're doing. She said, but I just want to teach. I don't really want to deal with this Black Power stuff, And I could kind of understand where she was coming from. She was just a classic teacher. And I tried to explain to her, I said, well, you really can't separate the Black from the teaching. We even teach our children this. We have something we call parent seminar for our parents that we begin the year off with. And we try to explain to them that every part of education has values in it. And one of the things that we tell the parents is that, take history, for example. And we tell the children this too. When I was in school and we had to study history, I remember, I'll never forget, we had a history teacher who was really passionate. This is in 8th grade. He was really passionate about history. And I'll never forget this lesson. He was just so excited and just so full of energy because he was talking about Alexander of Macedonia, better known as Alexander the Great. And I mean, he's all worked up, turning red and whatever. I'm like, what is going on here? He's getting excited there, And he was a very calm kind of guy. And so he was explaining to us that Alexander of Macedonia was the greatest warrior of all. He was a conqueror. And he went to Thebes, and he went to Greece, and he went to this place and that place. And he conquered them all. He raped, he burned, he pillaged, he plundered, he got them all. And then he got to his catch line. He says, and this is in the history books, he said, and Alexander of Macedonia, Alexander the Great, when he found that there were no more places for him to conquer, plunder, pillage, and burn, he cried. I'm like, what in the world? So the point is, when you teach, you can't help but teach values. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, but I went to high school in Columbus, Ohio. Columbus, Ohio is the largest city in the world. There's about 120 of them. Largest city in the world named after Christopher Columbus. If I had $1 for every time I heard somebody say Christopher Columbus discovered America, I could finance Lotus Academy for the next 10 years. And even when I was a kid, I was like, what are they talking about? There were people there when they came there. But what you're teaching is that those people didn't count for anything. They were ciphers, they were zeros, they were nothing. You're talking about agency. And when he got there, all of a sudden, it was discovered. So the point being that we have to figure out a way of educating our people, not just for Lotus Academy, but about the importance of any independent black institution, because those are going to be the ones that are going to be in the vanguard of getting us back to where we need to be, as Maulana Ron Karinga would say, to be the best people that we can be and the best of what it means to be an African person. Thank you. I would like to have Brandy come up and address them.
Thank you so much for having me here. It is such an honor and a pleasure to be here speaking before you all. What a hard act to follow. I'm so inspired hearing you talk about both the origin of Lotus Academy as well as the challenges and solutions that institutions like Lotus face in this day and age. So I guess I'll start off by talking just about why it was so important for me to send my son, who just started in September at Lotus, why it was so important for me to send him there. So similar to Hugh Clark, I'm not from Ohio, but I'm here from Philly, and I ended up in some white institutions. I went from North Philly to Yale, eventually Pennsylvania, or University of Pennsylvania and Columbia University. But it was at Yale that I realized the importance of my history and first started to get that knowledge of self. And it's so funny that these very white, racist institutions is what drove me to just not only recognizing the importance, but, really strengthening my resolve to ensure that I was a part of strengthening and building Black institutions. So I learned about Lotus well before my son was even thought about, but I knew that once I had a kid, I wanted to give him an education like that. So after college, I ended up teaching at Sankofa Freedom Academy Charter School. So as Hugh alluded to, there are many challenges surrounding what it means to try to do the African-centered thing still under the larger, I'll say it, white supremacist paradigm where you have teaching to the test, and there are all of these factors that truly independent Black institutions don't have to grapple with. But I still knew that for my son, that to be able to, send him to a place where we didn't have to worry about him stressing out about the PSSAs, or, in a school where, just because of the nature of charter schools, there wouldn't be necessarily the same level of control and say, and even just that connection. So to hear just the origin of Lotus and how it started as truly a family collective was something that appealed to me, and being able to know that I'm sending my child into a space where people are there because they love Black people. People are there not because they got placed there. So I happened to be placed there because I was a Teach for America Corps member. So most of the other teachers I was going to learn how to be a teacher with were not learning what I was learning. We're not teaching in classrooms, or me trying to apply those strategies were not going to work. So I knew I didn't want to send my kid to not to disparage Teach for America, but I didn't want to send my kid to a school where, teachers could come from anywhere. And so Lotus Academy inspires me so much because of the long history and because of the emphasis on the African tradition, the emphasis on knowledge of self. And so I had the pleasure of spending some time with Hugh and the rest of the Lotus leadership earlier in the year, or this past summer, and just got to talk to them a bit about what brought them to coming to Lotus and some of their experiences. And I realized that there's a common theme. Many of us, we have the experience of being miseducated. Seeing all of the whitewashing and the destruction and just the lies that are constantly being told about us. And so for these folks during the Black Power movement, whatever you want to call it, to have the courage and the wherewithal to start an institution, represented such a huge, a revolutionary step to say, I just learned about all of this, and now I have to make sure that my kids and that this knowledge is carried on to the next generation. And so what I'll say is that, we are in the same moment. It feels like, we're living in these cycles where, now more than ever, institutions and places where Black people can have a safe space, can talk about Black issues, can educate our children, it is now more needed than ever. Our history is under attack. Our people, obviously, we have been historically under attack, but especially in the education space, it is a battlefield. And to hear, this mismatch of, having this wonderful thing that so many people would benefit from, but not necessarily being able to reach them or know where they are, it represents, one of the greatest challenges, but also one of the greatest opportunities that we have, because there are people who are hungry. They may not have the language of Africanity. They may not, I'll even speak for myself. Before I started at Sankofa, I didn't even realize they were African-centered schools, period. Went to 6 different public schools here in Philly, had all white teachers. And even though Kepra and Imani and Imhotep and all these institutions had existed, and even Lotus had existed, it wasn't until I was introduced to that world that I was able to tap in. And as soon as I knew about it, then it went on my wish list. And so here I am years and years later, actually able to actualize my vision of sending my child to Lotus Academy. So I say that to say that, in terms of the challenge, I think that, every challenge has an opportunity. And this is the time is now. Even just seeing the fact that this is being live streamed, and Dr. Asante's nod to us moving into the future in terms of leveraging technology, and even being able to bring folks like me. I'm not so young, but some folks will call me a young person. But being able to infuse these institutions with new blood and be thinking about secession, like that is going to be the key to ensuring that our institutions continue. There are so many people out there who don't want to send their kids to the school where, the teachers are going to see them as less than, or, to a place where, every March, their kid is learning how much of, a failure they are because they're not getting they're not hitting the state test standard. And it's so ironic because I remember at Sankofa, in one breath, we can acknowledge how racist and white supremacist and all of that. And even with the children, I remember having these conversations with my students about, why it's unjust that we have to subject ourselves to that, but still having to do it anyway. And so I think, I take it upon myself as a responsibility as a Black person, as someone who believes in Black institutions, to put my money where my mouth is. So supporting Black institutions, but then also becoming a zealous advocate for institutions like the Lotus Academy, and being able to share with other folks who are behind the idea of supporting Black people, are behind the idea of, open up their checkbooks to support, worthwhile causes, and being able to spread that word. And the second thing I'll talk about is just the company that I started, and I think it stems from a similar place of recognizing just the lack of information, the lies they tell about us, and the way that, the traditional institutions have approached education. And so with my company, the Anti-Racism Academy, I coming from an African-centered background, so much of my work is rooted in that, but I realized that we have to bring the world with us in this work. And so if you look at the logo, like it's a circle of people of different races holding hands with Black people, with a Black person on top. It's a circle, so there's really no top, but the symbolism is clear that I feel like as African people, folks who've experienced both the worst and the best of the world, that we have a real value add to sharing and leading people in the way towards freedom. And that's through our schools, and that's through the roles that we take in government and in so many spaces where we have influence. And so the last thing I'll close with is just talking about the last both challenge and opportunity, which is around fundraising and coalition building. It is critically important to be able to, find those folks who are supportive. And I know folks here in the audience are, and folks who are live streaming are. We're all the true believers, but there are more folks out there for us to reach. And you see folks looking to YouTube, looking to music, looking to all these places to find knowledge of self. And because they've had negative experiences in traditional educational institutions, they may not view, traditional learning as the way forward or as a tool of freedom, like we had that awakening, or many of us had that awakening as we learned about Black history, whether it was back during the Black Power movement or even today. And so I think the more lives that we can touch, the more folks that we can spread the word to, the more folks we can add to our army that's really needed. Because when I look at Fox News, I look at what's happening in Congress, I look at the laws being passed to just outright ban the teaching of the truth and the teaching of Black history. The same folks who are funding the right-wing movements to attack Black institutions, we have to be, forging and building up, those counter actions as well. And so I know I'm preaching to the choir for sure, but I think, especially for folks a part of my generation, a lot of us, we read about all the wonderful things and all the courageous things folks were doing back in the 60s and 70s and got inspired and got angry and got riled up enough. But, it's about the institutions, where you're going to take all of that energy, where you're going to take all of those, all of that learning. And so grateful for folks like you, Dr. Asante. I got to work with so many of your proteges and folks who came out of Temple, and just to see all of the wonderful work that they are doing in the world, and just how far reaching your work has been. It's just really inspiring. And so, I vow to, do everything I can to support institutions like the Asante Institute, like Lotus Academy, and just really, really honored and blessed to be amongst you all. Thank you so much.
Wow, there you have it. Wow, powerful. This is really wonderful. And it makes me feel so good. Just last week, my son, who lives down at Chapel Hill in North Carolina, was telling me of an incident which my grandson had at a school. And this is a school that you normally would not. Again, you're talking about Lotus and independent Black institutions. And sometimes we send our children to what we consider to be the best of the white schools, and the Quaker schools, the Friends, and so on. But the same pervasive racism exists there as it does anywhere else in American society. And so it would be wonderful if we could support these institutions like they fully need to be supported. There's no reason why we should not have sponsors. People talk about how much money, you see here, how much money the African American community has, trillions of dollars, and the big entertainers and business people and so on. But I've yet to see one give $10 million to a school like Lotus. And that's where we're talking about. When we start talking about philanthropy, and we start talking about us having, putting our money in the places where we think the values that we want to show and demonstrate are, then that's when we're doing something. Now, if there are any questions, Mathora, Brandy, and you, what do you call the men? Mathori, Hugh will be willing to answer any questions or comments. Is okay. Okay. Now, do we have the microphone? Okay, just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. I think I saw one in the. Well, here it is. Thank you.
Hotep, how can
Brother
we,
Ron.
yeah, this is Bob Ryan, Hotep. How can we donate to Lotus Academy? And not just one time, but sort of on an ongoing basis.
Okay, let me give you the quick answer to that. Right now, Lotus Academy is in the process of changing its EMO. For any private school, there's always a corporation, a nonprofit corporation that runs the school. It's always been that way for Lotus forever. And so we have a new nonprofit corporation called INSA, N-S-A-A. That's an Adinkra word for authenticity. And the website is going to be launched in a few weeks. And INSA Education Collective, Inc., the educational management organization that runs Lotus Academy, does all of its business and whatever, is a 501c3 IRS recognized corporation, which means that any money that's donated is automatically deductible from your taxable income, dollar for dollar. So to answer your question, we're going to be sending out emails to people who have expressed an interest, and we've already started soliciting some of those people, trying to get them to make pledges and whatever. And that will be done from the INSA Education Collective, Inc. website. And there'll be a link on Lotus Academy's website, so it'll be easy to get to. Lotus Academy is very easy. It's lotusacademy.org, but it doesn't have any information about INSA because INSA is in the final stages, a couple more weeks, of having its own website. So we'll get back to everybody and let them know. But the one thing I also want to say is, as much as I deeply appreciate the concern for Lotus Academy and what I anticipate generosity and whatever, this institution that I'm standing here talking in, we also need to talk about how we support this institution. Because without this institution, I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. Even though I know you from way back, I might have to run into you on the street or something. So I think one of the things that we want to do, and a lot of nonprofits do this, like if you go to the Boys and Girls Club of America website, they have a page that has their partners. And we want the Maleficete Asante Institute to be one of our partners, so that whatever we do, we kind of do it in conjunction, because the stronger they are, the stronger we are. The stronger we are, the stronger they are. So I just want to make it real clear that this is not, here today about Lotus Academy. It's really about all the independent Black institutions that we can support and whatever. But to answer your question, we're going to get back to everybody and try to get all the information out in a few weeks as to how people can donate either one time or recurring or whatever, and it'll be done right from the website. Some people had asked about, sending checks and whatever, and I was telling them that I said, look, first of all, a lot of people, I don't know about your generation, they don't even have checkbooks. So, sending a check is like a check. What a check? Are you really serious? Exactly. So the website will be set up so that you can make a one-time donation, you can make a recurring donation, and you can use any debit card, credit card, PayPal, whatever. So it's coming. And thanks so much for your interest. Thanks so much. Yes, sir.
My name is Brother East, and I'm the nephew of Dr. Ed Robinson and a disciple of his.
Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. He needs the microphone.
I'll speak loud.
Okay.
No, for the people on the live. Yeah, the people on the live stream. Here.
Okay.
Okay, as far as we can.
That's what I'm saying. He's not able to.
Yeah, he can come up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. My name is Brother East, and I'm a nephew of Dr. Robinson, a disciple of his, and I'm just honored to be here. But one of the things I like to suggest is the elder too. I see all these profound minds here, but no one's brought anybody under 20 years old. Okay? And I'm saying is I see this happening at a lot of our different events, different gatherings. We're not weaning young brothers and sisters to be the heroes and sheroes that we need to lead us into this battle. Because we're at war.
Yeah.
Serious war going on. Biggest war, our children murdering each other.
Exactly.
Right here in Philly and across the nation, which is very concerning to me. And I'm a part of a school called Chad School that existed in Newark, New Jersey. We started in 1969. 2005, the school closed, being, again, depending on white folks' money to stay alive. We got so many millionaires and athletes right here in Philadelphia that could adopt a child, adopt a school. So I like to be a part of the project, help raising some money for the school, because I helped do that for our school. We had 600 students at one time, 100 teachers in Newark, New Jersey, New Ark. And so I'm 80 years young, but I'm still a Simba Wachunga, a young lion. So anyway, I live in go back and forth between here and Liberia, West Africa. I married a Liberian sister a few years ago and adopted 7 children, and named them all East. My grandfather was a missionary. My Aunt Gladys East went back as a missionary to Liberia. So we got a family legacy and a commitment. My children are committed. They've gone back home too. I ask a lot of black folks I meet. They've traveled.
Okay,
Yes,
question,
yes, sir.
question?
Here's my question. My question is this. Any way I can help, I can sign up and be a part of it.
Okay.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. One thing you can do right now, and if you go to Lotus Academy's website, there's a way of leaving your phone number, your name, your email address, and it gets to us. And it's also a little message section and whatever, so you can say, what it is that you'd like to do or who it is that needs to get right back to you and whatever. But trust me, we really, really appreciate it.
Outstanding presentation. Since opening up to the public, just wondering, have you had any problems with bullyism, cell phone usage, any of that kind of issue? No.
No.
Okay, great.
No, and again, I don't want to drag this out, but children are amazing because we've had a couple of situations. I put it this way: in 50 years at Lotus Academy, we've had 2 fights. Okay, wow. 2 fights, and the reason is not because our children are superior to other children. Children, especially at that age, we used to go to the 8th grade and we started at 3 years old. Children have a radar that lets them figure out very quickly what they can get away with and what they can't get away with. And they may have a little trouble in the beginning and whatever, but once you establish those expectations, they generally are going to fall in line. But when they see other people bullying and there's no consequence, then they're going to bully. If they see other people fighting, I used to have arguments. Some of my friends used to send their children to Lotus Academy. I had 7 sons, and trust me, they was rough and tough because that's the way I grew up. And I said, no, they're going to be smart, they're going to be well-mannered, but they're going to be rough and tough. And I had friends that had a problem with the fact at Lotus Academy, if you get into a fight, you're going to be expelled. Okay, and some of my friends would come and say, "Well, Hugh, man, look, man, you say you from the projects and all that. And, my son, he's taught. If somebody hit him, he hit back." I said, "Well, let me ask you something. You're a Muslim, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "So do you teach him when he's in the mosque and somebody hits him, he just starts fighting? Is that no? Well, that's different. No, it's not different. There's a time and a place for everything. I'm old enough to remember, and this is really telling my age. We had a lot of fighting after school." After school. I'll see you after school. So my point is simply that, yes, we've had some children that didn't know how to act and whatever, but that kind of systemic bullying and this, that, and the other, never had a problem. Never had a problem.
Got time for about 2 more questions.
Yes, Stan.
Let me first congratulate you and Dr. Sante and everybody's here because success was the movement. You're here now. You talk about the 50s and 60s. You guys are the success. So my next point is, and we have to get to is, when we were in the movement, we were taught that we were the avant-garde of the movement.
Absolutely.
It was the education process.
Yes.
And every day, we were the leaders of the movement that was now and the future. And so you guys are the success. So we now have to ask, and that's what I'm asking you, Dr. Sante, Ron, all of you here, when are we going to kick the movement off again?
Exactly.
We have to begin our children from the youngest that can comprehend that we are the future. And it has to start somewhere. Of course, you have Lotus Academy, and I guess I'm getting to how much more can we do to spread the movement. All those people, he's 80, He's a young guy. I'm 82. Yeah, he's a young boy, yeah. So how do we begin to come together? You mentioned some of it. Dr. Sante is doing it. You were doing it. But we have to be more intense and purposeful about the movement. And I'm laying that question on you down.
And I can make it real simple. I think places like the Molefe Kete Asante Institute, that's really the vehicle, because Lotus Academy on its own can't really do it. Dr. Asante, with his reputation and his knowledge and whatever, can really be a catalyst with his institute to bring a lot of people together. And that's why I say it's so important. And you know, we go way back. I remember meeting you in Strawberry Mansion in 1970.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
the first co-op in the city of Philadelphia.
first co-op in the city of Philadelphia.
My lawyer.
Yep. Yeah, 1970. Yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about it. I mean, I know how to get in touch with you and whatever, but I would really like to have the institute be the kind of clearinghouse for a lot of these things. Wonderful meeting rooms and all of this, that, and the other. So we need to get to work.
All right. Yes, one last question with Brother Coleman. Brother Coleman, I think.
Greetings, Brother Hugh. It's been many, many years. Good to see you again.
Yes.
And I've always known of your good works.
I met Coleman Holmes in 1968. 1968. He was one of the officers in the Black Student League at Temple University. He later went on from there to become a member of the Nation of Islam, and we've kept in contact for all this time. All this time.
I first had the pleasure of meeting you when we in the Black Student League were fighting to establish the precursor to the Department of Africology.
Afro-Asian Institute. Afro-Asian
Yes.
Institute.
Yes.
With Dr. Gethers and all those folks. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My question, my brother, is what age group do you educate in your school now, and how do you provide any social emotional education, and how do you help these children deal with the traumas of all the violence that's happening around them?
Well, it's actually in the classroom, but to answer your question quickly, we can talk later. I'm going to certainly get your new information. We started pre-K 3. We'll take children that are 3 years old that are potty trained, and we go to the 4th grade. As you know, for years and years, we went all the way to the 8th grade. But now we only go to the 4th grade, and every year we say we're going to get enough students to get back to the 8th grade. We don't want to go past the 8th grade, but we do want to get to the 8th grade. Brandy's son, William, his class has 18 students in it. So if they all continue, even if most of them continue, then it's going to be enough to just get rolling. So, but now I'll check with you later on, okay? Good seeing you, brother.
Thank you for what you continue to do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I'd just like to thank everybody, including those who use the technology to come in, and I appreciate your taking the time. This is a very worthy cause that all of us are involved in, and I'm sure all of you in some way or another have made some major contributions. When the brother, I just had to say this, one of my best friends and one of my real walkies as far as a comrade was another nephew of Dr. Robinson, and that was Dave Richardson. That was my man. That was my man. If you walk in Lotus Academy right now, you'll walk in Lotus Academy, and if you look to your right, you'll see a big picture of Dave Richardson. He was an inspiration for us in the early days because Dave was for real.
That's right.
He was for real. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both. All right. Thank you both. Asante sana, as we say. This is wonderful, and I think we will have a wonderful partnership, certainly. And I like that word, insa. Insa, the Akan word, meaning authenticity. I like that. That's a powerful concept. And we are starting to use more and more of our language. So it's very wonderful. So at this time, I would like to make a couple of announcements. One is that next week, I will be speaking next week on African American history. and that is fighting for and winning Ma'at. Fighting for and winning Ma'at, African American history. So we want to recenter on our own struggle here for a little bit. And we're going to do that because our speaker for next week, Dr. Nehusi, unfortunately had a death in his family, and so he has to travel. So I will be filling in for him next week, and we will have a wonderful time and a very interesting presentation about how our historical narrative has always been one where African people in this country have actually extended the concept of freedom. We have fought for it. And so we will go over some of the people that you know already, and we'll introduce others like Octavio Cato and other people, because a lot of people have heard the name Octavius Cato, but they don't know how great that brother was. And so we're going to talk about him as well. So we'll also talk about some of the people in our history that have been erased, like Diane Nash. People sometimes don't know the name Diane Nash, but she was one of the people in 1959 and 60 that I marched with in Nashville, Tennessee, against segregation at the Ritz Theater and at the Castleberger burger restaurant. I mean, there were many, many people. She was a Fisk University student, led a movement of college and high school students in that city to break down segregation. Diane Nash should never have been erased, and a lot of people don't know her name, but we'll bring her back. So there are many, many things to say. I look forward to seeing you. We say, as we always do, thank you to Brother Hugh and Sister Brandy. And we say we call upon our ancestors far and near, the mother of our mothers and the father of our fathers, to always render mercy and bear witness for the liberation and the freedom of all oppressed people. Ashe, it is done. All right. Thank you all.